Okay, it's ready.
Okay. Ready and I should start talking? I love your really aggressive finger count. Oh my
Quiet
god.
on set and
Jesus, you would be the best production manager. Everybody, places, everybody, places. Do you remember that movie, Center Stage?
I've never
Is that
saw
like
it.
a dancer only movie?
I
It's
think
like
so.
like an iconic dancer movie, Center Stage, and there's a woman running around right before like the big show at the end of the movie. And she has the goofiest ass voice. She's like, "Places, everybody, places."
Funny.
I figure you'd appreciate that since you
Yeah,
always
it
want
sounds like a
to.
classic.
It is a classic. Um. Anyway, welcome to HR and Other Tomfoolery. This is the name we're playing with right now. Don't know if that's going to stick, but I like it so far. I wanted to share something with you that was shared with me over the weekend and get your thoughts on it. And obviously, I have thoughts on it, or I wouldn't be bringing it up.
Oh,
Because
jeez.
everything I say is a trap.
Oh, boy.
So you better get it freaking right. Okay. So I was at a party over the weekend, and a friend of mine. So like we run a salsa dance school, and my salsa dancers know that I'm in HR. And so every once in a while they'll come up to me like, so I have a question for you. I'm always willing to listen and offer my unbridled opinions. So we were sitting down at this friend's house, and she made us like a nice meal. And my friend, who I've known for a while, she's danced with us for a while. She's been working at this company in Cincinnati that's like a staple of the community.
Mm.
It's like a huge, like family oriented business. Okay, we'll just put it like that. Nonprofit, I guess. And I will not name names, obviously, but it's an over 200-person organization. And she's been in love with this company, had nothing but great things to say about it, etc., for years now. And so she comes over to me and she shares basically that she and like 8 or 9 other women recently reported sexual harassment and like inappropriate touching and commentary from one of the directors. And it's been going back like many years. He's been there over 20 years. And she happened to like keep a log for 2 years because when it first happened, someone told her to write it down, but she didn't want to make a thing out of it. And so like she started kind of keeping track of these interactions, right? And so when she decided to bring it forward, other people decided to bring it forward too. And there was a long list of people. And what ended up happening was this director's boss was the CFO. And the CFO decided that she was going to do the investigation. She has no training in investigations. She was going to handle this investigation with multiple women that have come forward with this gentleman. And here's where it gets interesting. The director is the director of HR.
Mm.
So now you have like no one safe, no objective department to report these things to because the person under fire is supposed to be that. And the CFO is not a people person, so she says, right? Has zero training on this, is this person's direct boss, and decides to conduct the investigation herself. And then came back and said, basically, like, they're not going to do anything to him. They're just going to give him a stern warning. And, like, victim blamed. She said something like, let's say my friend shared, what am I supposed to do? I don't want to be in meetings alone with this person anymore. It's going to be really uncomfortable. And she's like, yeah, it'll be really uncomfortable for him too. So, just be professional. It's like, okay, well, she's the victim. He's the perpetrator. So, and this is a very well documented, i.e., 7 or 8 women have documented specific instances with this gentleman, right? Very well documented. It's not on her to be professional or to make him comfortable. Like, of course he's going to be uncomfortable. He deserves to be uncomfortable if he's making people uncomfortable. Stop. Then they have no sexual harassment training in place, like, which is a basic compliance piece, especially for a company that size, right? And it's basically disengaged all these women, and they're not comfortable there anymore. They're talking about like wanting to look elsewhere. They're really disappointed in how the whole thing was handled. They don't feel like it was objective at all or thorough. And there's a history, I guess, of this company like sweeping things under the rug. So yeah, that's what got dropped in my lap this weekend. And I felt some feelings about it, and I wanted to see like what your initial thoughts were.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. When people, because we talk about employee engagement a lot, and people, I've always felt people want to be productive. Like people want to work. You hear about all this
Yeah, I
like
agree.
people don't want to work anymore. Like that's not true. People want to be productive. They don't want all the BS. And it's like, this is part of that, right? Like being afraid or like having certain anxieties about being at work is all going to impact like that person's productivity or, even their own, mental well-being of, coming to work. And we always want to create an atmosphere where people like are excited to come to work and they're like looking forward to like
Right.
being in that role and being in that company, but also like that all stems from people waking up and being passionate about who they work for and what their leader is. And so we've always said like that you want people waking up and thinking, I only want to work for this person.
Right.
And so like that's kind of impossible to do when you get yourself into a mess like that. Um, but yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on it. So I'm trying to decide where to start. In terms of the like how it's difficult to have, um, this person's in like an HR role, and so it's difficult to like conduct that um, investigation or like have a thorough resolution. I mean, that's always why it's so important to have an external resource. And a lot of companies have like external lawyers that are on retainer or HR companies or consultants that can help with this. And even just in general, outside of HR and outside of law, just in general, like human nature is to be more like open and forthcoming with a third party than internal. I mean, you see that a lot with kids with their parents, like knowing which parent to go to. And you see that a lot with like friendships, when people are struggling and kind of are talking to different friends about how to resolve something that's going on with, one of their friendships. And so you just see it all the time, especially I see it all the time in recruiting. When I was a placement recruiter, like I always knew when an employee was going to be retained because during all the interviews with their with the thoughts that they would share with me, I always knew whether that was going to align with the company or not, right? But if those people share those thoughts directly with the company, which usually they don't, there's always going to be some kind of spin on it. And then, in addition to that, um, you know, people might not share anything at all. So I just know as a recruiter, it's always easy to see like who's going to be retained just based on all the extra information that they give me that I know that they wouldn't have given the employer. So I think that that's why it's important to have external parties in some shape or fashion, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to have an external partner be your entire HR department, but you can have them as a small resource that can help with things like this and sort through that, so that at least the employees then feel heard, right, and they know that it went through the proper
Right.
channels.
Right. I said that. I was like, we're brought in to do this for this reason, right? Like, it's one thing if you have an esteemed HR department that can handle it, and appear objective. But like when the problem is the HR department, in my firm but humble opinion, they should have absolutely 110% brought in an external team to do that investigation. Someone that's trained to do it and can at least appear objective,
Yeah.
right? Because then people feel like they got a fair shake and they're putting themselves, it's very vulnerable, like
Mm-hmm.
having to recount your story and put it out there, and it's your workplace, right? Like she's like the most positive professional person I've ever met. And she's talking about like crying at work all the time. She's so stressed about this. And then she told me that the she wrote down all these stories and all her notes, and she handed it to this woman, um, as like kind of information, thinking that she would come back with a formal process of like, hey, what do you want to share? Right. Apparently, all of this like verbatim information was just handed over to this director, which is so like, no, like she did not prepare that for his eyes. Right. And now she has to continue working with this person. And it's just a whole cluster. And it's really, really unfortunate because, we've had times where we've done investigations and we can't guarantee that someone's going to like what we suggest, whether it's keeping someone, coaching someone, firing someone. We also can't guarantee that they're going to listen to us, right? Like there's times where our job is to give options. There's times where we might say like, hey, we recommend that you move forward with termination for this person, but it's ultimately up to you. And if you don't, we recommend at least doing coaching and at least putting other safeguards in place, like having a robust training around sexual harassment and making sure there's support and follow up with people that have come forth and shared their stories, right? Like, and handling that very delicately. Like, there's got to be other steps in place. And when you engage someone that is a professional in that type of very sensitive situation, you're more likely going to be able to navigate those really tricky waters a lot better than trying to save time or a buck or, pride, keeping it internal, and it blows up in your face because that's what's happening, right? It's blowing up in their face, and all these people are probably going to be looking to leave, because they don't feel safe at work anymore and they don't feel heard. And then now they have no one that they can go to because the person's saying like, "Oh, well, come to me. If anything happens again, just come straight to me. Don't talk to anyone else." It's like, no one's going to want to come to
Well, yeah,
you because
yeah. This
you
is
victim blamed and like,
right.
no one's going to feel safe coming to you, So yeah, I feel like there's so many companies do not realize how easily those things can go wrong, right? One wrong step in a scenario as tenuous as that can explode, or rather, implode would be the proper word, right? An organization. And it becomes very, very costly to fix. Like they're going to be mitigating the effects of that for a long time.
Yeah.
And all they had to do was just say, you know what? Let's bring in an objective professional and make sure we handle this properly and carefully.
Yeah, well, it's like you said. I mean, these are people that love this company, have been there a long time, have always done good work, and now, this one thing has really like ruffled their feathers, right? And that like bleeds into everything. Even people that it doesn't affect, like they see how it was handled, and they see the company's values, right? They see like what the company thinks and how it acts, and
100%.
that affects everything. Um,
100%.
yeah.
That'll breed mistrust across the organization. Like that if anything serious happens, it's not going to be handled well,
Yep.
right? So why bring it up and put yourself in the line of fire? So I had, in my a previous organization I worked for, the former CEO was known for being very, sensitive to when people left the organization.
Hmm.
It would be taken very personally. Now, on one end, it was like, okay, he really invested a lot in the organization and trying to make it a good place to work. So, like, I understood why it was taken personally. But on the other end, it would always go to the extreme where, like, all of a sudden that person would be, well, they weren't good at their job anyway, right? Which was not true. So, it's like, let's not go to that extreme. We can make it a positive thing when people leave and they're more likely to refer their friends and like, maybe even come back, go get some extra responsibility and come back with what they've learned. So I'm a big proponent of that based on this situation. But what ended up happening that's very similar is we did a charity fundraiser every year for, um, again, so I don't have identifiers, a nonprofit that supported sick children, very famous nonprofit that supported sick children. And we would do a charity event every year, and we would turn over a big check, like $150,000, $200,000 to this organization. A big check for a small company because we were, a small 230-person company. And one of the supervisors of our company apparently was going through an interview process with this charity. And they were waiting until it got towards the end to share, like, hey, we are actually seriously considering this candidate, and we wanted to let you know and be transparent about it. He was so angry that they didn't tell him off the bat that he pulled funding from them the following year. He decided, and they would had a long-standing relationship with this charity. And he was like, yeah, we're not donating money to them anymore. And it blew up in his face. Like, tons of people left the organization after that, or were soured on the organization after that, because it was like, how could you take something so personally that you're going to take money away from sick children, right? And they relied heavily on that money every year. It was something that made people feel so good and so proud every year that we were doing this as an organization. And then to take it and turn it and sour like that, it really imploded. And he did not recover in terms of like his view within the organization. He ended up retiring, and someone else moved in to the CEO position and has been doing, from what I can tell, an awesome job. And he's a great guy, but yeah, it was not good. And it, again, like one wrong move like that, resounding effects.
Yeah, yeah, it affects everybody. Everybody sees it, you know. In every organization I've ever worked in, anytime there's any kind of issues, everyone knows about it. So it's really important on, what your stance is and how you react. Because no matter what, you're always going to have issues. Every workplace is going to have friction. And so really what you can't focus necessarily on not having friction. You need to focus on like your vision, mission, and values for how you react and handle those. And I think a lot of companies have like they just don't have that very well defined. They might have like a cool PDF or a sign somewhere that says their mission, vision, and values, but they don't really like live through exercises of what each of them means and how and why.
Yep.
And it really hinders their decision making. I just know with the clients that we've worked with on doing those exercises and honing in on that, all of them have said how they've used it as a tool to make decisions. And I think a lot of companies just kind of lack that.
I want to bring it back to that because I think that's huge, right? Because no matter what decision you make, you're never going to make everyone happy. So I love that you said it's not about avoiding friction. It's more so making sure that whatever decision you make is driven by what you say your mission, vision, and values are. Right. And that makes it feel easier and more objective. I know as a leader, I think that all the time. Anytime I'm in a tough situation or I have to have a difficult conversation and I just really don't want to do it, right? Or I have to make a tough decision and I don't want to make it, I go back to like, what would I coach my clients on, right? What would I advise them to do? And I have to hold myself to the same standard, right? What are our mission, vision, values? What do we say are um, our cultural values and behaviors? I have to hold myself to that standard. Because as the leader of the organization, if I'm not doing it, how can I expect other people to do it?
Right.
Right. And it really helps because it's almost like an accountability, like an external accountability partner, like the good devil and the bad devil. The angel on my shoulder is my external accountability partner being like, you should do this because this is what you say you're going to do. And it doesn't feel as hard anymore. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, I got to do it. I got to live by it. So, yeah, it's, I think many, many more people need that. What would you say is one thing What would you say is one thing that, um, one decision in an organization that shaped how you view what you do today?
Well, that's what I kept thinking about with hearing these stories, right? So there's a lot of reasons why, I went out on my own with you to form this business, right? Um,
Because I'm awesome.
that was, I mean, that was one of the driving factors. Yeah. Um, there's so many reasons why I chose to go this route. But if we were to talk about just one of them, it would be like those experiences that I had in different workplaces and seeing, just not being aligned with the leaders, right? Because I'm very, when it comes to business, and capitalism, like I have a very conservative mindset where if you're a business owner, it's your business and you make the decisions and it is what it is, right? So I found myself like wanting them to make different decisions, right? But what I realized is like it's their business. I can't influence or change what they want to do. It's just not a fit
Yeah.
for me. So I had to take my own self responsibility of like,
Yeah.
you know, this isn't, I could gripe with my friends all day about how wrong they were, but at the end of the day, it's their business. So I
Right.
wanted to create a business that, was, treated people the way that I wanted to be treated and had an atmosphere that I wanted to have, and then also help other businesses that aligned with that do that because it's not easy, right? And
Right.
a lot of businesses want to do it, they just don't know how. Um, and so, that's one of the reasons why. Because I just know in one of my roles, I had an issue with an employee where it wasn't handled right. Basically, the owner told me, "Hey, I heard about what happened, and I'm sorry that happened," and that was like the end of it. And it was like that's you know what I mean, but like it's gonna happen again. Like if that's the response, like now I'm just worried that like it's gonna happen again or something similar is gonna happen again because nothing's been resolved.
Right. It's just
And that was
sad.
like, I think, you know, a few days later, like you and I had met up and and I was talking about, like I really want to form something different. That was like a huge catalyst to all of
Yeah.
this is when things are not properly handled.
Yeah, I mean, a big one for me was the same, like going up against that same person or other leaders in that organization and being like, I know how to do this differently. Like, if you would just listen to me, which sounds very like narcissistic. Like, I
Yeah,
know what I'm doing and I can do it better. No, but that's not how I felt. It was more just like, hey, they're assuming all the risk and they clearly know what they're doing in some reasons, right? Because they built a really successful business. That dude has like a boat and a Florida house, and he is not hurting for money. So there are plenty of things that he did very well that I probably could not do as well. But when it comes to culture, I was like, I know how to make this work differently for people.
yeah,
And I want to be able to not be banging my head against the wall, running into these roadblocks. Like I want to be able to walk the talk. And I'm also willing, like you said, I have to be willing to assume the risk, right? Because if they're the ones assuming the risk of the organization, they do get to make those decisions.
right,
So, like people can come up with ideas all day long, but at the end of the day, you also have to understand how to run a business and it has to make sense for the business. So, I have loved the challenge of as we advise clients, we're having to walk the talk and do the same for our organization. And I feel more validated in advising clients because I'm able to say, like, yeah, we do this, right? We're not always perfect, we're not always successful, but we're able to do it generally successfully. And so we know it works, and we're also able to face the same challenges businesses face, and we understand the pressure and the time constraints and everything that comes into running a business. And so, like, I think we come up with really practical solutions, and we're practical in the way we consult because we get it, you know?
yeah.
So,
Well, I hope either something changes, for your friend internally, or
yeah.
hopefully she gets some more support behind her, and some of the mindset changes, and they can make some adjustments. Or I hope that she is aligned with another great company where she can continue that great work somewhere else.
Yeah, I hope so too. It's a shame when I hear stuff like that. It makes my heart hurt, and it also makes my blood boil, both at the same
Yeah.
time. I get real feisty.
Mama bear.
But yeah, no, it's wild.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I'm sure we'll have plenty of other wild stories coming up in the future because things are never boring in HR anytime you're dealing with people.
No.
Um,
People be
but
crazy.
that's what I had for you tonight. People be
Yeah.
cray.
Yeah.
All
Very.
right. Well, that's that. Should we sign it off?